A very warm welcome to the fourth webinar of REXTRO 2025, the Silver Jubilee Tech Showcase of Faculty of Engineering, University of Ruhuna. Every great breakthrough begins with an idea, but ideas alone cannot change the world. It is through collaboration, shared vision, and collective effort that ideas truly become impact. That is the essence of today's theme, idea to impact, collaborative innovation for global challenges. This session is more than just another step in our series. It is an invitation to think bigger, to connect across borders, and to discover how innovation thrives when we work together for a common purpose. I'm Setini Kirindegedra, a second-year undergraduate from the Faculty of Engineering, University of Ruhuna, and I'm delighted to have you with us. Let's begin this journey of collaboration and inspiration as we turn ideas into impact together. Every great journey of change begins with an idea, but it's visionaries who transform those ideas into impact that truly shape our world. Today, we are honored to welcome one such leader whose work has redefined innovation and collaboration in the digital era. Ms. Janette Toral is a multi-awarded advocate, digital influencer, and a leadership coach. She is highly respected for her independent insights and has worked with government offices to train MSMEs and communities on digitalization. Beyond that, she has guided businesses in market research, leadership development, and digital transformation projects, empowering countless individuals and organizations to thrive in today's fast-changing world. Her story is not just about technology. It is about people, possibilities, and progress. She embodies the spirit of today's theme, idea to impact, collaborative innovation for global challenges, showing us how collaboration and creativity can solve real problems and drive meaningful change across borders. With that, it is my great privilege to warmly welcome our distinguished guest speaker, Ms. Janette Toral. Ma'am, we are delighted to have you with us today. And
Thank you
now,
very much.
we invite you to share your insights and deliver your keynote speech.
Thank you very much, Ms. Satini, for the very kind introduction. And of course, to Professor Chitral for giving me this opportunity to present to you. I hope you are all doing well. I want to know, how are you feeling today? Maybe you can, or how are you feeling this evening? How's your day? So maybe if you're feeling great, if you can type a 10. Maybe if you're tired, you can type 1. Or if you're somewhere in between, you can type 5. So that for us to have an idea on how everyone is feeling today. Or are you sleepy already? No? So depending on where you are. Anyway, thank you very much for this opportunity, for being a resource speaker here at REXTRO 2025. My name is Janette Toral, and I'm very excited to talk about something close to my heart. No? How can we transform ideas into global impact through collaboration? This is a very interesting topic because for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially if you belong to an older generation, more often than not, we want to work alone, especially for women, because we don't just trust other people that easily. We're always worried that whether we can fulfill our expectations, or we don't know if the people that we're going to partner with are reliable or not. But because of the developments in technology, we started thinking differently about how to go through collaboration. So I think it is just to maybe some quick introduction. I've been a book author. I've been in the e-commerce industry since 1995. So you can say that I'm already 30 years in this industry. I've authored books. My latest one is Smarter with AI. It is my fourth book, although it's my first time to publish it on Amazon. And I've also written storybooks to more or less venture into teaching children on digital citizenship, because I think that is sometimes to connect through other people, especially to the younger ones, no? Through stories can be an effective medium of doing it. And I'm also part of a cooperative called the Filipino Online Professional Service Cooperative. I'm also into market research. That's iMetrics Asia Pacific Corporation. If you're familiar with the Purchasing Managers Index, that is generated in different parts of the world. So for the Philippines, we're the ones generating it. I'm not so sure if you're familiar with BNI or Business Network International. I'm also a launch ambassador here in the Philippines and a project director for the Global from Asia Decentralized Project. So more or less, some of these tasks are some of the things that I do here also venture in the realm of collaboration. Now, I think let us start with some big questions. No? How can collaboration across industries and countries turn bold ideas into real solutions? I think, of course, what happened during the COVID pandemic gave us some insights on how countries can collaborate and bring down whatever economic barriers that they may have, and so that they can go through possible opportunity, so that they can explore opportunities, so they can solve those problems. And what does it take to innovate with purpose and create lasting impact? No? I mean, can we create something that will allow us to leave a legacy behind? I don't know about you, but earlier this week, I was really fascinated because I saw a video on YouTube about Warren Buffett. I hope I pronounced his last name correctly, giving a something like an economic or stock perspective about the economics in the US. Although a lot of people are listening from all over the world. And that talk was quite long. It was, I think, broken down into several videos. But there was one talk there about why life begins at 60. And he was saying, because normally we hear the term life begins at 40. And then when you turn 60, you're preparing for retirement. So you should be slowing down, among others. It's like it's the beginning of an end, usually, when you think about 60. But he has a totally different perspective about it. And he said that life begins at 60 because you have 3 decades of compounded wisdom, that will allow you to start something fresh and go through whatever bucket list you have that you don't want to uh, be sad with if you will not be able to deal with. And of course, you take a man's word seriously, especially if he's already 94 years old and very sharp and has a lot of interesting insights. So when you think about innovation with purpose and creating lasting impact, now that we also have the capability to live longer lives if we take care of ourselves. And so that means that when we think about the impact that we will make, not only do we think about something that we will do that maybe perhaps the next generation can enjoy, but we can actually create something that even our generation will get to see and will get to enjoy. No? So, can collective innovation truly solve today's most pressing challenges? Well, more often than not, we do our best in solving the challenges. But of course, there are a lot of factors that come into play that that may prevent us from resolving them. But that does not mean that we have to give up. There are still opportunities for us to keep on working on them and see how can we do it better for every iteration opportunity that we may have. Now, when people talk about collaborative innovation, simply put, it's all about working together across boundaries, whether that's a sectoral boundary, an organizational boundary, or a geographic boundary. And the intention is to co-create impactful solutions. Before, when you want to venture into a project, you only think about what skills do I have, how much money do I have. Like if I will put it in a simple scenario, like if I'm planning for an event, I haven't done events for quite a while, but because of some developments, I find myself organizing events again. Before, when I used to organize my own events, what I would only think about would be how many social media posts should I make? How much money should I have? How much money should I spend on ads? And how many people should help me at the event? But today, if I have an event, the first thing that would come to mind is that who can I partner with so that I can share the opportunity with others. Is there an opportunity that I can also do revenue sharing with others so that they can help me reach my goals? Or is there an opportunity for me to um, reduce my cost by giving an opportunity to another person? So in every venture, there is always an opportunity to collaborate. You don't have to carry the burden yourself, no? Although it does not guarantee that when you reach out to another person, you will get what you want. Sometimes all you can do is ask, and you can either get an approval or a rejection. But usually, every rejection teaches you how to make a better offer. And you learn from every rejection as to what are the missing elements in your proposal that perhaps lead to that rejection. And hopefully, you learn to do it better so that people will give you a chance. The only problem is when the person who's being rejected is still foolish enough not to make any changes because they really want to do it their way. And that's where the problem will likely get bigger if they don't care to adjust or improve their situation so that they can get the collaborators to support them. One of the hats that I wear, as mentioned earlier, is I'm connected with the John Maxwell team, and I'm an independent executive program leader there. And there's a favorite quote or a lesson that is often taught in the subject of leadership is that people buy into the leader, then the vision. So that means even if you have the best ideas, it's like it's a no-brainer. Your idea is fantastic. Your ideas are great. But if they don't buy into you as a leader, then whatever ideas you present, the vision that you present, it will be hard to pitch it. So more often than not, when you're not getting the deals that you desire, when there's no effort on the other party to really work with you, be on the other side of yes, and really help you out, more often than not, you have not established enough credibility or integrity to earn that buy-in. No? Although, of course, on the other side, we are also being taught to be on the other side of yes. So we give people the benefit of the doubt and look at them as a 10. Unless proven otherwise that they're not a 10, we should find ways as to how we can work together and give people a chance. No? So co-creation, sharing, and scaling, no? That's the primary ideas of collaborative innovation. And when ideas meet collaboration, then most likely impact can also happen, no? If all things come together. I remember also back in the year 1997, we were lobbying for the passage of the e-commerce law. Because without an e-commerce law, we cannot do any electronic transactions that will be admissible as evidence in court. Meaning, if I buy something from you and pay you online, if somewhere along the way something went wrong with that transaction, like maybe I sold you a fraudulent product or the payment was a fraud, if you sue me and use my electronic payment as evidence, that will be treated as secondary evidence rather than a prima facie or a primary evidence. Hence the reason why we lobbied for that law. And I think to earn the signature of the president to make it a priority legislation. By the way, our president then was in the Philippines was former President Joseph Ejercito Estrada, who only stayed in office in 2 years because he was toppled into power, people power. But we had two laws that were passed during his term: Y2K law and e-commerce law. So I have no harmful I have no harmful or ill feelings towards him, because we were very effective during at that time in passing for legislation. But in order for that to be a priority, we even have to write to as many associations as we can, explain the bill, and get them to co-sign with us, appealing to the president to make it a priority legislation. So it's really going around. That's why today, for the past few months, I've been getting calls from students. I don't know why. And you know what they were asking me? Um, where, how do I get to work as a lobbyist? How do I become an on-the-job trainee so that I can become a lobbyist? And I told them, lobbying is not a job. Lobbying is a passion. You lobby because you really believe in what you believe in. You don't just lobby because you're just getting paid to lobby, although there are professional lobbyists. But the real ones are really passionate in what they believe in. When we end up passing the legislation, um, people were asking us, did we spend money? So I said no. Actually, whenever we go to Congress or to the Senate, they're the ones feeding us, because usually when I go to Congress, I would be wearing a t-shirt. And, I would really explain the law, like an ordinary person. So you can imagine how young I was when I was doing that. And also talking to the association leaders, trying to get them to support uh, passing a law that would promote the growth of e-commerce in our country. So collaboration is really possible, especially if we know that, if we really believe that we can't do it alone. And at the same time, we see that there's a collaborative interest. There's a common interest. And that it has to be more than just the common interest. There's a bigger picture, that there's a bigger problem that it will resolve. At that time, our message was, we need to do this because we have to level the playing field for everyone. Level the playing field for the small, the micro and small medium enterprises, so that even if you're a small player, you cannot afford a place in the mall, you'll be able to compete, because online, anyone can be a seller. And I remember recently I attended a cybersecurity forum, and we were talking about cybersecurity issues because I'm carrying a solution called Watchdog Cyber Defense. And there was a guy who said, I'm not on social media, etc., etc. And he was saying that with all the problems that we have right now, was it worth it? Was it worth it to be online? You're doing all of these technologies. And then, I was really shocked with this question. So I think somebody gave an answer, but he was really pushing that we're supposed to be regretting everything that we did to lobby for policies like that. And I said, "Are you telling me that I should regret the idea that entrepreneurs should be empowered to do business online? I should regret the idea that we now have an equal footing, although that means also that you're giving the bad elements as well an equal footing, because there's a space for everyone under the sun online, whatever, no matter how peculiar or naughty your interests are. There's a space for us out there, right? It depends on your interests. But I told them that we can't discriminate, right? You do what you can. You look for the good on a bigger perspective, rather than just worry. It's like a Chinese perspective. When I was young, my uncle will tell me that there's a Chinese belief about problems and opportunities. In fact, whenever I talk to a Chinese person, and if that Chinese person will usually talk to me about negatives, I will tell him, and you remember the Chinese belief about problems and opportunity? Whenever there's a problem, there's an opportunity. Um, don't focus on the problem. You focus on the opportunity. Although that's when I realized that not all Chinese knows that saying. So maybe my uncle only invented that. But anyway, so those are why. So I think that's the reason why collaboration is very important. Now, why does this thing matter to us today? No? Because we have so many challenges right now. It's when we talk about climate change before, the whole subject about climate change is the hole on the ozone layer. But now, when we talk about climate change, it's the what they called it, cloud burst. Have you heard of that term? It's the cloud burst. And because of that cloud burst, all of a sudden you have a sudden downpour of rain in a short span of time. That's giving our engineers, our urban planners, some sort of a headache because they never really thought that you will have such downpour of water, of rain in a short span of time, to the point that the current infrastructure is not designed to take it on. Of course, there are other countries that have what they call it, like a water rain sink. Like they have several miles of several floors, but underground where water can stay, and then be let go gradually so that the cities, the towns will not get flooded. But of course, if your city, your town gets flooded, it can also signal a lot of issues. If you're doing some flood control program and you're still having your government is spending millions or billions in flood prevention infrastructure, but still there's a lot of flood. And then you realize that the amount of money that you allotted for those projects were not being spent properly. And the contractors, the district engineers are releasing money even if the project is not yet completed, or that the project are using substandard materials, or supposedly the project is already finished according to paper, but when you do the actual inspection, the project does not exist. So it's also so normally a lot of our climate change, a lot of our climate issues, especially in reference to flooding, can also be attributed to corruption. Like those who allow the trees to be cut, those who give land reform, who give agricultural property to supposedly farmers, giving them hectares of land. And then after a few years, less than 5 years, less than 10 years, all of a sudden they're converting agricultural land to residential land or to commercial land. And then all of a sudden they're building subdivisions, they're building whatever they're trying to build there. And so so a lot of our climate change issues are tied to corruption, no? And I think that is not only happening in my country, it's happening in many countries around the world, no? And that is why we're now seeing a lot of countries protesting against their politicians, not taking a backseat anymore and just complaining. I mean, we're back on the streets again, really airing out these concerns. And that is where collaboration in action is happening again. Because before, you're just complaining. You write a blog post, you rant on social media. But now people are collaborating also in their fight against corruption. Because a lot of these challenges right now, in a lot of cases, the root is corruption. When people have become too greedy. I remember, maybe more than a decade or two, somebody approached me for a digitalization project. Something like create a website, an internet system, but they require that along with the purchase should include laptops. So, and then they asked me how much it will cost. So I was giving an amount. So let's say for hypothetical discussion, I said maybe around, I think at the most it's already too much, but I think 2 million is too much. Maybe 1 million will do based on my initial computation. And then he was asking me, what will it take for the project to reach 100 million? I was really, my jaw dropped, what do you mean? How do we make it, how do we make it appear that we need to spend that much amount of money? And the person who was negotiating with me was not even 25 years old. And I was so surprised, oh my gosh, sabi ko, what happened to this kid? Allow me to still call him a kid, right? I wasn't that old, but I was a few years older than him. But I was really surprised. No? So that's why a lot of us, and we have countries that trying to embrace digitalization. The mainframes, the use of COBOL, RPG, all of that were intended to computerize, to make transactions transparent, to adopt general accounting best practices. But more often than not, those who don't like the transparency and being able to remove the power to make discretionary decisions are the ones who are really preventing us from going digital or really fully embracing digital. And that is happening in many countries. No? And you can see also that happening in the health sector. Supposedly, maybe your town should have 10 health centers, but only 2 are functioning, 8 are defective. Or sometimes the medicines are fake or low standard, right? So these are our challenges. And if corruption is collaborative, indeed corruption is collaborative, right? The paper goes through many people. It requires so many signatures. It requires so many approval. So all of them are part of the corruption chain. Corruption is collaborative also. So if you want to combat corruption, you also have to have a collaborative solution. People have to work together better. We have to level up our leadership perspective, our intuition. Because no matter how technically skilled you are, but if technically skilled, you have the brains, but if you're in your heart, you don't trust people, you don't like working together, you always doubt other people, you always judge people, then no matter how good your brains are, it's hard to progress if we will not collaborate, right? Okay, I hope we're good. So let me give you some real world examples. So I said here that technology by itself doesn't create transparency. It's the willingness of political leaders, institutions, and citizens to collaborate around it that transforms governance. So this is happening in different parts of the world, what we call ghost projects, right? So like uh, like when you look at your government, supposedly there's a lot of projects there that are being funded year by year, and then you realize that some of the projects aren't real, and the leaders does not know it either, no? Or some of them don't know it anyway. And then you find out that only like 30 to 40% of the budget is being spent on the project, and 60% goes to corruption. So no matter even if we talk about public key infrastructure, blockchain, um, artificial intelligence, maybe all of these technologies can help, no? But if the political leaders are not willing to change, it's hard. And if we don't express our perspective that we don't like corruption anymore, that we detest corruption, no matter how savvy you adopt technology, it will not change. Okay. So like right now in the Philippines, that's a big issue right now. The ghost projects, and several senators, several congressmen were named. Of course, there are whistleblower contractors, and they've been doing it for more than a decade already. That's why you'll be surprised that we found out that one of our congressmen, who's supposed to be like a party list representative, which is not really a full-fledged congressman, owns like a dozen choppers and different types of flying machines out there, from jets to Gulfstream to what have you, and you have no and that's why, and when you find out how much they're getting, that's the reason, right? So 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 even when you think about all the technologies that were embraced, but if you don't collaborate and address also the cultural issues, it will be a challenge. Another example for real world examples for collaboration. Let's focus more on the positive. No? The business community today is changing, no? In the Philippines and in many countries around the world, and I won't be surprised if also in your country. There's a business community called BNI, Business Network International. As a disclosure earlier, I shared to you I'm a launch ambassador in one of the regions in our country. I'm an accidental ambassador because the director of our company is a regional director. So I got dragged in and said, please support me. Again, collaboration. Sure, why not? You know. But anyway, um, ever since I joined it, I'm already 6 months in the organization. I realized that if you see people often enough and you have a common objective of growing your business, also in the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team, we also meet on a regular basis, which means that we're trying to grow our practice as our profession as leadership trainers, coach, and speakers. You can actually grow together because the more you get to know each other, the more you will realize what needs you may have that you would rather get it within that community rather than outside. If like I mentioned earlier, I'm back to organizing events again, and the reason for that was there are members there who told me that Janet, please organize an event. Please do a book launch with your book Smarter with AI. It was the farthest thing in my mind, but anyway, I end up doing it. So now I hired a social media company there to do my social media campaign. I hired a project company providing projection system. I hired a company doing the events management. I did my event to the mall of one of the members. I didn't realize he owns a mall. And then I also have another member who owns a science museum. So in our community. But those are real transactions. And I don't think those transactions would even happen if I did not join the community. I was also able to refer two friends to a lawyer in the group. One was having problems with his son's school, and the other one, his virtual assistant ran away and stole money. So he needs to send a demand letter, and the client was actually from Thailand, not even from the Philippines. So I find myself also helping other people solve their problems through the people in our community. So if you really want to grow, whether as a professional or as an entrepreneur, or to simply expand your network, you should really join groups. And on the other hand, on cross-border transactions, I'm actually a project director for the Global from Asia Decentralized Program. So prior to joining BNI, I was trying to form chapters on different parts of the world. So if somebody from Sri Lanka wants to open a chapter, reach out to me. So the idea here is we want to promote cross-border trading. So I'm looking for people who has specific skill sets where their community can grow and do cross-border trading. So one of the persons I met was actually a former student of mine. So that's him in the poster, Napoleon Beltran. And then when we were catching up, I found out that he was already in print on demand. He was selling shirts on Amazon.com. Um, they call it what do they call that? Amazon has a program where you don't you every all of the products are print on demand. So meaning you just upload the design, and when somebody buys that design, you make money. You know, you earn a royalty fee for every item that you sell. So I told him, wow, you know, you're making like $2,000 a month by just doing that, you know, royalties, huh? For selling designs on Amazon for shirts, among others. So would you be in? And you know, he was really thinking of being able to share that experience with others and thinking how to go about it. So I encouraged him to become a chapter leader. So he became a chapter leader. We started organizing how to create your own print on demand business, among others. And we now find ourselves teaching others how to do print on demand. And actually, it is because of him that I end up writing my latest book, Smarter with AI, because because I kept attending the meetups and I don't have anything to show. So I decided that I'm gonna write a book, put it on Amazon Kindle, Kindle Unlimited, and also have a printed edition in the Philippines. But instead, before of publishing or printing 2,000 to 3,000 copies of books and then put them in the garage, and you know, it takes so long to dispose all of them. Now I don't have to do that anymore. I only print whenever I have an order, or I will have a stock of 10, and I only sell it when it is needed. But for everybody, they can read it online via Amazon.com. So, and I also met another guy, also a former staff of mine, who also established a chapter. He specializes on 3D design, 3D printing, and I think because of that, I realized that you know the ink that you use for 3D printing here in the Philippines, I think that's less than $20, less than $20. But the volume of pieces that you will be able to print from it, the outputs that you can generate from it, can allow you to earn like 20 times the amount of the ink or the thing that you use. So he was showing me that he was designing toys, jewelry, even bust of animals, because here we love our dogs, we love our cats. At least some do. And you know, they would have a pet cemetery, you know, they would even put bust. And I realized to make that bust, it will only cost you like $15 based on the ink cost. But they were selling it for like $150 and people are buying it, right? And some are even exporting those products. So I think there are a lot of things that you won't know until you really meet with different entrepreneurs, and being open-minded enough, not open-minded to networking, but being open-minded enough that you can learn from other people's experiences, and there's a way for you to synergize. And you know, I was surprised because when I organized a GFA session on 3D printing, my client, who's in the grocery business, and his husband is in the architecture business, he said, I need that. Why do you need that? Because you know, whenever we do house designs, we have to create those miniature buildings, miniature here, miniature there, and we have to print them and showcase it. So instead of getting somebody to do that for us, we'll just 3D print it on our own. I said, yeah, why not? You know, that can be a possibility. Um, Also, pardon me, no, because I know that the examples that I'm sharing here are the ones where I have experience with, especially in the area of collaboration, where one way or another it has an impact globally. Like in the case of Global from Asia, that person now, Nap, will be going to Thailand next month because we're having a cross-border summit there. So he will be one of the resource persons. And I really enjoyed that cross-border summit because when I first attended that, that was in China before the pandemic, 90% of the participants are Westerners. And you know, we were in China. Only 10% are Asians. 90% are from Europe or the US. I was so surprised. And then when I saw what happened last year, I was not there, but when I look at the pictures, it's still the same. 80% are not Asians. So I was telling Nap, we should be excited because we're gonna go there next month for the cross-border summit. We're gonna meet a lot of Western people. Maybe we can do projects with them and collaborate. I was telling him that. Anyway, so another example, I'm currently, as one of the hats that I'm wearing, I mentioned earlier, is I'm into market research. And I got the chance to get a project that will allow me to document the growth of the gig economy in our country. And I remember in our recent presentation, there was one resource person who was also presenting the growth of the gig economy of Sri Lanka, right? So when you talk about the gig economy, these are people who are self-employed, don't have employees, working for themselves, so they can be virtual assistants working online. Or it can be your food delivery guy, your taxi guy that you hire on the app, or maybe a carpenter that you hire through the app, or a helper that you hire through the app. So those are examples of the gig economy. But of course, in reality, 80%, 80 to 90% of gig economy workers are not digitalized, no? They are the part-time workers of the real world. Your part-time construction worker, your part-time cleaner, your part-time salon worker, um, even your part-time teachers. Those are examples of people working in the gig economy. And it is foreseen that with the changing trends in the job economy worldwide, more and more people will go to the gig economy. When a person lose or gets fired or resigns from their job, more often than not, they will become a gig worker first until they find a full-time job. And maybe some of them will just decide that they will become a gig worker, especially if they also have made a fundamental decision of spending time with their families more, especially if they have children, right? Like for me, I've been a gig worker for so long. I think I could say that I've been a gig worker for the past 30 years, since 1995. When I was doing all my lobbying for the e-commerce law, I was a writer. I get paid per article. At that time, the pay was quite generous, but now, when you look at the writer's fees, not much has changed. No, I remember having a gig then where I get paid $1 per word. Those were the days, right? But now you won't get that opportunity anymore. But anyway, but the gig worker, I think that is something that countries, governments are now need to take seriously because most of them are not protected. Most of your part-time workers have no social security. They have no health benefits. In fact, more often than not, they are not even properly classified in the country. So when the government decides to give some, what do you call that, dole outs, for the people in the country, usually they give that to specific segments of society, like the employed, those belonging to the poor sectors. They have a program to be able to properly identify them. But more often than not, the gig workers are not properly identified. So I think for those of you involved in sciences, in statistics, in policies, especially if in your profession as engineers, more often than not, you will also become part of the gig economy. You have to participate in the discussion on how the gig economy in your country must be properly recognized and must be properly protected, because more and more of us will become workers in the gig economy, especially when you get old. You'll become gig workers too, right? So I think we really have to look at the gig economy seriously. And the growth of the gig economy was also possible because of collaboration. When you look at I don't know what you have in your country. In our country we have Grab. I don't know if you have Grab in Sri Lanka. Maybe you have something different. We have Food Panda that does food delivery. I don't know what you have there. But from a business model perspective, that is what we call a multi-sided business model. So why is it a multi-sided business model? for a food delivery service to function, you need the restaurants first. If you have few restaurants, a lot of riders, a lot of buyers, they will not be happy. But if you have a lot of restaurants, you have few riders, few buyers, the restaurants will not be happy as well, right? Will not be happy. Now, of course, for that service to function, you also need the delivery, the courier people. So if you have a lot of courier, few restaurants, they will not have enough orders to fulfill, especially if there are not enough orders. So they have to be balanced. And then on the other hand, even if you have a lot of customers, you have a lot of restaurants, you have a lot of riders, but you don't have enough customers. Both of them will not be happy either. One of the things that I get to watch on YouTube are some documentaries about what's happening in different parts of the country. Like I saw some documentation about how in one country, if I'm not mistaken, China, has so many riders, or doing food delivery, and the likes, to the point that they are barely serving 10 orders in a day because there's just too many of them, right? So that's the problem with their gig economy. They're not able to control the numbers. And I think that's the reason why in countries like in our case, they're putting a cap. Like for example, if you are a food delivery service, you want to hire riders, they will only tell you, oh, you can only hire up, you can only get up to 30,000. It's not an extravaganza where you can get as many as you like. Why? Because the roads will not grow. The roads will remain the same. So you cannot get too many and cause a lot of traffic in your town or in your cities or in your major highways. At least there's some sensibility there, no? There's some sensibility from an urban planning perspective that at least our transport sector, at least on that area, they're making a proper decision. Not just to approve a huge number where you will have a deluge of people working in that sector, and all of a sudden they will not be earning enough because there will not be enough orders to make each one of them earn comfortably. So that's why you also need to put some caps there. But again, for these businesses to survive, there's a collaboration between the platform, the clients like the restaurants and the partners, the riders, and then the government also making a conscious decision. Hey, don't be too greedy. You can only start with this number. I cannot decide that you will increase because traffic is so bad already. If we and so many accidents. So how can we give license to more riders if there are too many motorcycles are getting caught in the accident? No, so there's that sense of there's rationale, no, when making a decision. Okay. So anyway, another thing here, government, business chambers, and MSMEs work together to measure AI readiness and cyber resilience. One of the projects that I'm working on, so let's leave behind the gig economy study that I'm working on. I'm not yet done with that. Along with the Sri Lanka report, we have a deadline on November 11, final report by January, printing deadline by April. So it will be out on a gig economy report by June. No? I will inform my friend in Sri Lanka who invited me here that, hey, our report is out. Maybe you might want to share it to your students. No? Maybe there will be another opportunity to include the Sri Lanka resource person to present that report to you because a big chunk of you, I'm very sure, are part of the gig economy or will become part of the gig economy or may have family members in the gig economy. But I think you should approach that person because we are now validating also our numbers. But anyway, so another report that I'm working on is for the export sector. And we're now talking about AI readiness and cyber resilience. So how ready are our exporters to embrace digitalization, artificial intelligence, and are they even cybersecure in the first place? Because a lot of the countries, right, a lot of trading partners in countries right now, especially for cross-border testing, trading, they now require supplier companies to go through what we call vulnerability penetration testing. I that's a mouthful. Usually it's very difficult to pronounce. So again, vulnerability penetration testing. So they now require that, no, to ensure that the infrastructure of these companies are secure, right? And so one of and more often than not, people are intimidated with that test. So so to be able to do an analysis of the cybersecurity, we were offering them a 30-day trial of Watchdog Cyber Defense so that we can scan the network. And one of the things that we do is we check the vulnerabilities of their email. So that means if I have your email address, I can use a service like if I have I been pawned and others, and we will be able to find out how many times have your email address has been breached. So when we say that your email address has been breached, meaning you have an account on a website that has been hacked, where your email address is exposed, and maybe they were able to decrypt your password as well. So let's say for the sake of discussion, LinkedIn, let's say maybe Yahoo, or maybe another platform got hacked. And let's say you have accounts with all of them, and you're using the same password for all of them. Because sometimes we do that, right? Like you use one password for all of your email addresses, or one password for all of your social media accounts. So if one of them gets compromised and somebody got access to that database, that breach database, and that breach database was used to try to log into other sites, and they will try their luck if you're using the same password, then your account might get attacked, no? Of course, right now we're encouraging people to use two-factor authentication. Maybe some of us are assuming that people are using two-factor authentication, but you'll be surprised. There are a lot of people who may not be using two-factor authentication still. No? So, but knowing if your address and if your address, like for example, I had a meeting yesterday. We were talking to this loyalty program company to test this cybersecurity for 30 days so that we can do monitoring, network monitoring. And when we were talking to the CEO, we found out that his email address has already been breached like 6 times. So of course, there's the change of password. He mentioned that all of his accounts have two-factor authentication. Okay, that's good. But you still have to change your password. But if I am in that situation, I might also decide to change my email address. You know, let's say instead of Janet at my domain name, if my email address has already been compromised, maybe I'll change the name and then just point my other emails to me so that I'll be starting fresh, no? So maybe I should not be using the same email address for decades. Maybe I should change my email address every 2 or 3 years and just auto forward the other email so that you reduce your risk for being compromised. But of course, studies like this, proper implementation of AI and cyber resilience requires collaboration. I recall in one of my visits in a province, there was a cooperative who was serving, I think, almost 100 rural cooperative banks in Mindanao. So these cooperative banks or these cooperatives were lending credit and they're doing savings and loans. But what this cooperative did, they started providing ATMs for the cooperative so that the cooperative will be high tech. They will now have their own ATM. And surprisingly, because I spoke during their event this year and talked about future-proofing cooperatives, I found out that that cooperative, apart from providing that ATM technology, was also providing them cybersecurity services. And of course, that's not, and of course, I think it's a natural because, you're maintaining the ATM network for the cooperatives. So they were also rendering cybersecurity service for all of them. So that's why when I was doing this study, this one, the one that I was telling you for the exporters, so that's the reason also why I'm doing the cyber resilience. Because a lot of companies, they cannot afford cybersecurity. They cannot afford to hire someone. They cannot afford to have an IT head to really, and even acquire the software to maintain their networks. At least it's not, maybe they can afford, but it's not a priority for them. So I'm trying to see, depending on the findings of the study, if I can also propose creating a cooperative where companies can connect to that cooperative and be protected cybersecurity wise and provide some sort of a computer emergency response team, but put it in a cooperative model. So why do I like the cooperative model? Because you become a member, and when you pay for the services of the cooperative, it's not exactly an expense, because when you become a member of a cooperative, you are investing in that cooperative. So every time you patronize the services of the cooperative and you pay for them, the cooperative also generates revenue. And if they are profitable, they can give dividends to their members on a yearly or every 2 years basis, no? Depending on the charter of the cooperative, right? So, so I think that's also based on the idea of collaboration. Because if you're going to purchase something alone, maybe you will pay $25. Like, for example, in our case, when we do network monitoring, we charge around $25 per computer. So if you have 50 computers, that can be a huge investment. But if you're part of a cooperative, and let's say the cooperative is serving and connecting 1,000 or 2,000 computers, whatever technology they may be using, they will be in a position to offer it at a very competitive rate, so that the members can be happy because they're paying at a lower rate. But at the same time, they can also benefit from the dividends that the cooperative can give them, because all of them are paying for the services of the cooperative. So that's the idea that I'm looking at. And of course, that can only work if people participating in it believe in collaboration. So that's why in collaboration, you can go a long way. No? All right. This time, let me grab a screenshot from betterdata.ai. So this is another real world example. Instead of hoarding data, financial institutions, regulators, and AI companies can collaborate through privacy preserving technology to innovate responsibly. One of the reasons why we are lagging behind in artificial intelligence adoption in businesses, no? It is because of the data that needs to be shared. So, for example, um, in the work that I do as a data analyst, one of the services that we offer to retail companies, especially those with loyalty programs, is that we can analyze your loyalty program data and be able to determine some of the trends so that you can plan better on how you can serve your loyalty members better, and perhaps what products would be in demand that you should consider collaborating or partnering with, no? So that's the idea. But it for them to carry that out, they will need to share real data, meaning names of members, age, transactions, yes, maybe you can do masking technology to mask those information, but you can also unmask that, no? So there's a need to convert them to synthetic data. So when you convert them to synthetic data, so let's say, Janet, this is my age, this is my gender, this is the amount of products that I have purchased and the kind of products that I have purchased. So when that is converted to synthetic data, my age will not be exact, but will be in the same range so that it is almost near to the original data, and it cannot be reversed back in order to identify who is the original who is the original person being referenced to by these data sets. So how can this information be helpful? um, Actually, there's a lot of possibilities. I was telling the president of the supermarket association that if you can give me your sales data, and we agree that you monetize your data, we can convert that real data to synthetic data and then sell that as a data set, and or sell it for subscription. So that if I am a company, let's say I am a supplier of olive oil, and then I'm interested to know what are the popular brands of olive oil, or what are the other alternatives that are being purchased by consumers, and maybe what other products they may be purchasing that can be complementary to my product. I can I can get access to that data and do my research without worry, because I'm not accessing original data. What I am accessing is synthetic data that is near to the properties of the original data. So when you look at the data privacy law of your country and a lot of the data privacy law, synthetic data is not personal information. Synthetic data is not considered as sensitive or personal information as well. So they are not protected by data privacy because they are not original data. So I think there is, if we can create this, if a lot of companies will be embracing this, imagine how students can benefit from it. Because sometimes students also need to do a lot of data analysis, but they can't because they cannot access information. They will be told that these are confidential information. There's a lot of, it will compromise data privacy, confidentiality, etc., etc. And that is why countries must issue regulation for synthetic data adoption and for conversion of synthetic data. And companies converting it to synthetic data and monetize that data or do data sharing for analysis so that we can all make better decisions. It's hard to make a marketing plan, it's hard to make forecast, among others, if you don't really have first-hand information. If you're just relying on the crumbs of information being shared to you, it's hard to make strategies based on that. But I think if we make synthetic data available, we can make better decisions. We can come up with better products if we have access to close to real information through synthetic data. So in our case, we're trying to promote the adoption of synthetic data. So it will take some time, but I'm very hopeful because I really believe that synthetic data can open the doors for collaboration. Okay. So there's a lot of case studies there. I'm now watching the time. I'm thinking whether I'm telling too much stories or if I'm getting to be boring already. All right. So collaboration today can be supported by a lot of platforms. Of course, you can use Slack for teamwork discussions. You also have GitHub. Of course, you have platforms like Zoom and a lot of AI-enabled customer relationship management programs. But let us not forget the human side as well, because what truly powers collaboration is trust, diversity, and shared goals. Um, One of the reasons why I also like joining BNI, because if I really don't go out there and talk to people, I will just find myself chatting to people via Zoom and via Messenger or Viber. And of course, the quality of the relationship is not any less. They can be good as well. But I think the likability factor is totally different when you meet people face to face. No? And we must always remember that in bad times, in the most difficult times, people will do business with the people they like and trust in bad times, but more so in good times. People will do business with the people they like and trust. So how can you be trusted? How can you be likable if you don't go out there and meet people? No. Of course, if you're some sort of a technical expert, people might trust and like you immediately. But if you lack the social skills, the people skills, the communication skills, if you lack that empathy, you lack that sense of collaboration, having that sense of patience to having patience to do collaboration, and be open-minded enough that you need to work with different types of people who may not necessarily be like you. It will be hard to grow. Technology alone will not be enough. So, there are times where you still have to meet people in order to get things done. Like for example, if I'm organizing an event, no matter how good I am in using technology, but if people will not register and show up, it's gonna be a failure. So, for a lot of the things that we do in technology, last touch will always be by humans, and in fact, the most important touch will be from human. All right. So how do we overcome the barriers? No, of course, collaboration isn't always easy. In fact, sometimes things can be done faster if you do it alone. But we want to go farther, far, far, far ahead, rather than be a one-hit wonder. And that can be done if we collaborate. No. So we might need to deal with cultural differences or sometimes even resource imbalance or intellectual property concerns. But remember that they can be overcome. No? For cultural and time zone gaps, you can foster cultural teams. You can also, if you have a partnership where you need to share technology and other proprietary information, then maybe you need to have clear agreements in order to overcome intellectual property concerns. And you can also, if there's resource imbalance, you try to review and look what arrangement can be a win-win so that everyone benefits from the outcome of the project. My husband is actually a civil engineer. And although he's more focused on designing transformer towers for electricity, the big towers, no? So that's his specialty. And although technically he's already retired, but he works as a consultant designing that because not too many civil engineers or structural engineers can do those type of projects because they're quite niche or specialized. So I think even engineers, no, you really have to find your niche. And the more you have that niche, even if you are at a retired age, people still look for you because they need your services. But of course, you can't do that work alone. It requires collaboration with the project manager working on site, making sure that they follow the specifications. Because more often than not, a lot of the failed projects on the field, the corrupt ones don't have original designs in the first place. They're just making it up as they do the project. But for the legit ones, and if you find yourself that your plan will not be executed according to its original specs because they're trying to cut down on cost, you really have to when your project managers talk to you, of course you really have to check the work that was done, right? And making sure that they followed it. And if they don't follow it, stand your ground and make sure that you get the necessary cooperation because you're not going to compromise your integrity, your license, no, for some if they don't follow it. But it doesn't mean that you have to be hard-headed as well. You help them fix the problem, work on the solution, especially if your design is not like there are consideration like maybe the parts that are necessary to build that design are not available, especially if you're importing parts from China or from other countries. All of a sudden the stock is not available and this is what is only available. Otherwise you will wait for a month to get that stock and the project cannot just lie out there in the open and it's rainy season. So that's where also engineers, you look for a win-win, right? And you try to address the situation as necessary in order to overcome such a hurdle. Okay, so what's the future of collaboration? I believe the future of collaboration will look very different. Of course, AI will enable borderless teamwork, and PKI, because when projects go wrong, all of a sudden there are missing documents, there are destroyed documents. So PKI and blockchain are very important. Digital signatures, securing those documents, creating an audit trail, putting it in the blockchain so that you have a lot of eyes looking at the project. People will not be complacent because they think no one is watching, no one is double checking, especially in government where citizens want more transparency, right? Green innovation hubs can also bring government, startups, and NGOs work together. But again, all the problems that we're having right now that are climate related, like the cloud bursts and how our infrastructure is coping up with the cloud bursts, that's where it opens a Pandora's box as well. If our projects are really being implemented properly, or has it become a victim of corruption, right? And there's also the public-private partnership, no, that will address issues that no sector can solve alone, no. So the future is borderless, digital, and collaborative. And collaboration starts with you, no? I hope that after you leave this webinar, when you go back to your work or you go back in school, look at what you're working right now. What collaboration can change the way you work, all right? And look at potential partners. If there are innovation challenges, I also encourage you to join them, participate in discussions, join communities, join groups. My son, actually, he does not know how to speak Mandarin, no? But because of his interest in the subject, he joined the community. Every Sunday they meet up, no? They try to learn the Mandarin language. But because of that also, he got interested with our family tree. And because I created a family tree before on jenny.com, he suddenly find himself maintaining the family tree and suddenly going to other countries or other places just to meet ancestors or people related. But I think that would not have been possible if he did not open his mind in talking to people and meet up and start with common interests and start participating in various challenges. I remember I used to join hackathons and I would tag him along to join hackathons, no? And of course, for hackathons to work, you have to sit down and talk about how to solve a problem. And and even though those exercises will not actually lead to real projects because sometimes they are just ideas, but the insights that you will gain, the people that you will meet, the opportunities that it will create for you, sky is the limit. No, it's really up to your imagination. So I think the more open you will be in collaborating, in meeting with people, the possibilities are limitless. And those who go out of their way to build relationship, and those who will go out of their way to be open to innovation and collaboration are the ones that will really succeed in life, no? So I'd like to turn this back to you. Think of a collaboration, it may change the way you work or studied. And it does not have to start with something big. It begins with one idea, one partner, one shared goal. And from there, the bridge from idea to impact is built. And I wish you well for this session. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Toral, for that inspiring and eye-opening keynote. You didn't just speak about innovation. You showed us how collaboration can truly transform ideas into solutions with global impact. Your journey reminds us that innovation is not only about technology, but also about people working together, learning from one another, and building bridges that lead to meaningful changes. Now, we would love to carry this conversation forward. This is your opportunity to engage directly with Ms. Janette Toral. Please share your questions through the Zoom Q&A panel, and we'll moderate the discussion. Let's begin with our very first question for Ms. Toral. So, ma'am, there's a question. It asks, what's the single most important thing an MSME must do to turn an idea into real impact?
Normally, you put it to the test. Any idea that you have in mind, instead of saying no, put put a small experimental test to see if it's gonna work, no? For example, if somebody asks you, "Oh, I would like us to collaborate on a new product or a new project," then see what you can do where you will be able to test it on a small scale. And if it's gonna work, then you can decide whether you're gonna step up further and make it a big project, so that you don't necessarily turn an idea down, but you try to make small experiments so that you can see whether that will serve as a signal for you to make a bigger experiment. Thank you very much for that question, Ravisha.
Thank you so much, madam. So, thank you for sharing your invaluable insights and for taking the time to so openly and thoughtfully engage with our question. Your wisdom, experience, and inspiring perspective on collaborative innovation have truly enriched today's session. We are deeply grateful for your presence here today and for the way you've not only educated us, but also encouraged us to see how ideas, when nurtured through collaboration, can create real impact on a global scale. Sessions like this remind us of the power of innovation to drive positive change, and your contribution has been a shining example of that. As we conclude today's journey from idea to impact, let us carry forward the reminder that collaboration is not just a tool. It is the heartbeat of a meaningful innovation. Together, we've seen how ideas, when shared and nurtured, can grow into solutions that touch lives across the globe. To every participant here today, thank you for lending your curiosity, your attention, and your spirit of learning. You helped transform this session into a space of inspiration and possibility. Our next webinar, Sustainable Ship Design and Marine Renewable Energy, featuring Chief Engineer Varuna, will set sail on 8th of October 2025. Mark your calendars because it promises to be another exciting step in our REXTRO 2025 journey. Until then, stay curious, stay collaborative, and keep turning your ideas into impact.